How do you go about bringing new life to a reality defined by death? Pregnancy can be among the most joyful of human experiences, but for women in Gaza, it is yet another desperate battle, one that many are losing. I'm Anelise Borges, and this is The Stream. The UN estimates that there are more than 50,000 pregnant women in Gaza at the moment, and on average, 180 give birth every day. That despite a healthcare system that has all but collapsed, where food and fuel are lacking, and unsanitary conditions combined with relentless bombardment make it one of the most dangerous places in the world to be a child right now. Here's a small glimpse of what the women in Gaza are going through.
الظروف عن جد كتير صعبة، ومع إن أنا حمل يعني وبنام على فرش أنا وجوزي، وبكون فيها المية بنقط علينا ندى، خايفة إني أولد في خيمة ومكان يعني إنه مش مناسب لطفل صغير ينام فيه.
احنا قسم الولادة الطبيعي الخامس يما قاعدين منيلين ما لقينا الا الصاروخ نازل علينا فوق يما. هاي الشهداء يما ودنيا هيك يما والله حرام.
انا قاعده في خيمه في رفح. لما انا قعدت في الخيمه سيارات يحطوا لها سيرج غبره، مأوى من غير خيم، ميه مش نظيفه، اكل مش نظيف، نار بنولع، يعني فيش حتى بدي اعمل له ردعه على النار كمان برضه هذا جراثيم. يعني انا الولد جبته هنا هيو نايم بالحضانه له 3 ايام، جرثومه معاه سخونه، يعني الحمد لله الواحد والله ما هو عارف ايش يسوي يعني.
I'd like to bring into the show right now Dr. Haa Hijazi, a gynecologist who has continued working despite being displaced multiple times by the war. She's currently in Rafah and volunteering at the Emirati Women's Hospital. Dr. Haya, thank you so much for joining us here on the stream today. I would like to first ask you, how many women were you able to see on a daily basis before the war started, and how many are you seeing now?
You know, Gaza is a place of a crowded area. There is more than 2 million in a small area on the map. So we, in the daily basis, we can see from 100 to 150 cases in 24 hours, okay? And now we can see in Al Emirati hospital in the south of Gaza, 500 cases in one day. So 500 cases, we cannot deal with them in the accurate way and cannot give them the accurate medical management. So the number of cases that die, that we miss, that complain of the complications are increasing. And I want to tell you that the cases that undergo to hysterectomy due to postpartum hemorrhage is increasing because there is no medical aids to treat them and to deal with them.
Can you tell us more about these complications? You say the number of cases of hysterectomies are on the rise?
Yes, the complications of delivery as postpartum hemorrhage, postpartum depression is increasing. Psychological illness also increasing. I saw a case in the war. She died from sepsis. She was 23 years old, and it was her first pregnancy. She was complaining of fever and increasing in white blood cells in the blood. And she came to the hospital, Shifa Hospital, but because of the bombing, there is no medical staff to deal with her. They say to her, go to another private hospital. The private hospital said to her, we cannot deal with you. You must go again to Shifa Hospital. From hospital to hospital, we missed the case and the case died.
And this is, of course, one case. I can only imagine the number of women that are not even being registered. We've heard of online initiatives to help and advise pregnant women in Gaza. Are they still active and effective?
not all women have access to the internet because there is no electricity. They are in the tents and they cannot charge their mobile. They cannot charge internet because don't have money. Okay, but the online initiative in the internet are outside, and they can and people here in Gaza, they are very afraid to contact with anyone they don't know from outside Gaza. Okay, it is yeah, because we are in the war. But for me, I gave multiple or many women medical consultations in the war on my Instagram and on my Twitter, on my TikTok, on my WhatsApp. There, I can give all women free medical consultation to help them here in the war of Gaza.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us here on the stream, Dr. Haya. And to discuss this situation further, let me bring into the conversation now Dr. Hadil Al-Masri, the head of Women's Health and Development Unit at the Ministry of Health of Palestine. She joins us from Ramallah. Laila Baker is the Regional Director for Arab States at the United Nations Population Fund, joining us from Cairo. And Dr. Omar Abdel-Mannan is a pediatric neurologist who has worked and taught in Gaza and in the occupied West Bank for the past 10 years. He's also the founder of Gaza Medic Voices and Health Workers for Palestine. Thank you all so much for joining us here on the stream today. Dr. Hadil, I would like to start with you. Women in Gaza seem to be faced with an untenable choice right now. Try whatever delivery in a tent in unsanitary conditions, or risk going into a medical facility and being bombed on the way or once they get there. Can you tell us more about what you're hearing from your contacts on the ground?
Yes, sure. Thank you. Actually, of course, I just want to give you only an idea that the situation was not optimum or ideal even before the war. So you can imagine that with the given mortalities and morbidities of mothers, we were working on that, of course, on in Palestine, and I think that they have been achieved a lot, but we were not in optimal conditions. So starting from here, you can imagine the catastrophic circumstances that pregnant women and women in reproductive age in general, who are actually contribute to 25% of all the population. So they're suffering a lot under these conditions. So you've said that what kind of choice do they have? Should I stay home or in shelter places where no actually health points or access can be possible? If they were lucky, then there would be some midwives or community workers who are used to help women giving birth, like in the traditional cultural dayas, if they have this, or would they actually go and try access the hospital? And if they have also to access the hospital, it's not only about the risk of bombing. Sometimes when you're in pain and you want to, if you just saw this video that the woman was very concerned of her baby and not herself. So if they think that this will save their children or their babies, then they will go there. But if they reach the hospital, would they actually have the proper care? Because
Absolutely.
if you have this emphasis,
and we've been talking about the healthcare system collapsing here. Laila, what do pregnant women lack in Gaza today?
Everything. First and foremost, they lack protection. They are not given access to health care. They have no nutrition, water, sanitation, shelter, social services, safety net, nothing. And, you know, I really appreciated that you raised the number of 50,000 pregnant women who are currently in Gaza, and about a tenth of those who will give birth within the next 3 to 4 weeks. But each one of those 50,000 women is a person. She has a family, and she's carrying 50,000 more lives within her. And I feel that somewhere in the over 100 days of this bombardment and assault on the Palestinian population in Gaza and elsewhere in the Palestinian occupied territory, we've lost the face. There's somehow within that the dehumanization of a population that deserves dignity. And first and foremost, pregnant women deserve food, water, shelter, protection, good health care, and to be able to deliver in safety and dignity and to return to their families to raise them in a safe and dignified environment. Every single person in the Gaza Strip has been completely usurped of that right. And it is 100% preventable if the bombardment from Israel were to cease and desist today.
You paint an accurate yet heartbreaking picture there. Dr. Omar, I would like to bring you into the conversation. Gaza Medic Voices put out a tweet with an exchange with a doctor in Gaza who describes zero antenatal care, no delivery beds, women having to give birth on mattresses in hospital hallways. It really is, as Laila put it, a disaster.
Absolutely. This is the reality for women and the children that they give birth to on a daily basis in Gaza. These women are living through hell on earth. It is an apocalyptic scene. The idea that 2.3 million people, and of whom, as your previous speaker said, tens of thousands are pregnant, and almost 5,000 deliveries every month. That's 15,000 babies delivered in the last 3 months in what has been a genocide, not a war, a genocide. The lack of maternal care, the lack of maternity services, the lack of pre-hospital care means that women are delivering babies in the shelters, in the streets, in the rubble of their own homes. And this is unacceptable in 2023. And unfortunately, the Western world, the global North, has been complicit in this by allowing this to continue. Unprecedented, unabated bombing of these hospitals. Gaza Medic Voices, which is co-founded by myself, Dr. Tanya Haj-Hassan, and Dr. Rebecca Inglis, we've been taking that testimony from medics on the ground inside. Our own colleagues just came out of Gaza 3 days ago who spent 2 weeks at our Aqsa hospital. What they described in the emergency department was women, children, and men coming in droves, 500 admissions in one night, with 2 to 3 doctors looking after everything ranging from children with above-knee amputations to women having seizures as a result of eclampsia, which is a condition that happens during pregnancy in a minority of women. And these women are not able to access any sort of care. And, on top of that, you have the lack of sanitary products, the lack of sanitation, which is increasing the risk of sepsis. You are seeing women literally dying on the cesarean section table as a result of an infection, and their babies are often at high risk of infections themselves. So we are in medieval style medicine, and this has been 100% man-made by the Israeli occupation forces, by the Western world, and by the lack of action by the Arab world on top of that.
We were also able to speak to Dr. Mohammed Salama, the head of neonatal ICU at Al-Sultan Hospital in Rafah, about his working conditions. Take a listen.
We have also deficiencies in anesthesia in operation room. A lot of cases done operation, even urgent CS without anesthesia. It's happened, and it's happened every day. Once a time, electricity also cut off from hospital, and urgent CS done on the mobile phone light without anesthesia also. This is a disaster. We faced it every day. If the mother came to us too early, the most danger will be to the baby. And it came too early because contraction of uterus, even from fear or direct injury, or even the mother already came to us by direct bombing her house or something like that, and the baby delivered to us premature, which is a very dangerous and fatal condition to the baby and even to the mother.
Dr. Hadil, you mentioned that conditions were not great before the war started, but let me be somewhat provocative here. Why aren't Palestinian authorities doing more at the moment? Can they do more?
Do you think that anyone can do anything now? I mean, I'm not sure if anyone is actually doing enough. I have no idea. I'm not a politician here. I'm just a doctor who's working technically, and we're doing, at least from my part, regarding the reproductive health and maternal health and newborn. We're supporting technically, of course, and of course, Gaza has the share through the UN agencies, that's for sure, because we don't have really an access there. But I really can't answer this question if they are doing or not doing, to be honest.
Enough.
So I'm not a politician.
Fair enough. Laila, it seems like everyone has their hands tied at the moment. The UN has also called multiple times for aid to be allowed in, to no avail.
It's not just the accessibility and the access to aid. While it's important that we meet the immediate needs of a starving and deprived population, I think I mentioned in my last intervention, this is completely preventable and avoidable. With one word, ensuring that the bombardment ceases, that the UN is able to deliver what we already have lined up in terms of our trucks, and the delivery for immediate use. And if I can just put a sidebar here, the things that we are delivering and able to get to the meagerly functioning hospitals right now under unsafe conditions are not even being unpacked. They're being used straight from the box because there's such an incredibly high need. What we need right now is, one, for a complete humanitarian ceasefire. Two, for the commercial channels to open for the market back into Gaza and allow for free-flowing goods to be there, to lower the prices, for people to be able to access them, and to allow for the UN to do its work in safety and peaceful environment that will allow for the restabilization of the communities in Gaza, for people to return to their rightful homes and to be able to rebuild Gaza in stability and without fear of safety, bombardment, or displacement, and forced displacement. Without that, I fear that the rest is a bandage.
It's crazy because I feel like we've been talking about these points again and again for over 100 days, and yet here we are, still talking about them. Dr. Omar, we spoke at length here about pregnancy, but can you talk to us a little bit more in detail, and you mentioned this briefly, about the newborns, about these children, this new life being brought into this context? What are the risks for them?
So the children have been disproportionately affected, as we know. Over 10,000 child deaths, many thousands more under the rubble. Every day, 10 children lose 1 or 2 limbs. So that's bilateral or unilateral below lower limb amputations or upper limb. That is unacceptable. And these children that are being left with these horrific injuries, many of whom are burnt beyond recognition. And I've heard these stories. My own colleagues, again, describe children coming in to Al-Aqsa Hospital with burns to the point where you could see down to the bone. And this is consistent often with the white phosphorus munitions, which is a war crime when it's used in residential areas. So these children are left with physical scars that will mean they are disabled for the rest of their lives. And the ones who survive are often wounded children with no surviving family members. That means a child that has lost 2 to 3 generations of their family with literally not a single person with the same surname as them. This is unacceptable. And on top of that, the mental scars, the mental health of these children, what kind of population is going to be left of tens of thousands of orphan children with no parents, no future, no hope, disillusioned by an Israeli war machine and by the lack of humanity by the Western world. And we were on day 102 of this atrocious massacre. The global South has started to awaken. There has been a grand awakening within the general population. Unfortunately, the US president, Mr. Biden, Mr. Sunak in the UK, and many others have been helping to further the needs and the agenda of the Israeli government, which is, frankly, to wipe out Gaza off the map. And it is now our duty, our moral obligation as health workers, and this is what we are doing as health workers in Palestine. It is our moral imperative to start speaking up, to start taking our own action on the ground, in the cities, in London, to start having protests as we are, to have sit-ins, to have, to push for sanctions and blockade and boycott, because frankly, the lack of, of ability by the UN to do anything in this situation as a result of one veto by, a warmongering United States government means that we have to take action into our own hands. We need to be applying economic boycotts, sanctions, divestment, and stop arming the Israeli government that is sending these bombs on these children and decapitating a whole healthcare infrastructure, causing a public health emergency that has led to the deaths and continual deaths and maiming of tens of thousands of children. The number of deaths is said to be 20,000, 24,000. Actually, if you look at the data behind that, and if you look at the likely numbers under the rubble, the likely excess mortality, I am pretty certain the numbers are over 50,000 right now. And they will go into the hundreds of thousands unless we, as a global concerned citizen community, start acting, and acting quick.
We've spoken multiple times about the dangers of targeting medical facilities in this war, but there's also, of course, a danger of lack of fuel for generators. Take a look at this video right now. Electricity was cut at the Pediatric Intensive Care at Al-Aqsa Hospital. Dr. Omar, I want to go back to you here very briefly. What does this mean for these doctors and these babies?
I am horrified by these scenes, and I have been. And every time we see this, it's even more horrific. I have worked in the largest tertiary and quaternary neonatal units in London, and I can tell you now, these neonatal units rely on electricity for every functioning part of that neonatal unit. It relies on it for the ventilators that keep these babies, premature babies, alive. They rely on electricity for the fluids that go through these babies' veins to rehydrate them, to keep them nutritioned. And this now means these doctors are working in conditions where these babies are at risk of dying imminently because of the lack of electricity and generators. And the number of cases of acute malnutrition that we are seeing in these premature babies and also in children under the age of 2 means that, when you have 90% of the population starving and unable to eat a single meal a day, these children under the age of 2 have permanent cognitive and brain damage that will lead to years and years of negative prognostic outcomes.
Dr. Hadil, Dr. Omar touched on this before, but obviously we've been seeing hundreds, thousands of horrific stories, individual stories out of Gaza right now. I wanted your take here on the long-term impact of this war in the next generation. We're talking about tens of thousands of children who are now, as Dr. Omar say, affected for life. What kind of work will the authorities have to do to care for these kids?
Yeah, it's of course the children and mothers, because as we mentioned earlier, that if the mother is lucky not to die, but she's also at risk of developing long-term morbidities and problems. And of course, I'm really worried and concerned that such children living without houses, without basic needs for life, without also people caring for them. But of course, the main thing is it's about the post-traumatic psychological problems, of course, and also I don't know how they would really cope with this new life. So we need them to be able to just start thinking about really starting a new life. But of course, I think there will be some more. I hope that working intensively on starting from scratch, like bringing them to safe places. This is the first thing, that the ceasefire, of course, and then we have to start with the safe places, the hygiene, food and water, electricity. This is the basic human needs. And then afterwards, we can talk about the development and investment in other projects. But of course, their health. And also, I'm really wondering, I'm here standing in front of by this camera and just wondering, how would we actually proceed again with all these massive destruction that has happened? I mean, how many years would we need in order to have an access to routine medical care?
Very good question. So it's an enormous, humongous task ahead of all of us, I would say. Thank you so much, Dr. Hadil, Laila, and Dr. Omar, for taking part in this very important conversation here. And as always, thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget, you are part of this community and we want to hear from you online on social media. We now even have a WhatsApp. And if you want to suggest a story or a topic of conversation, you can use the hashtag or the handle AJStream. Take care, and I'll see you soon.